Let me back up and tell you how I ended up sitting at Easter dinner with a forensic accountant, watching my parents' world collapse around a table full of deviled eggs and accusations. My name is Rachel Martinez, and for 6 years, I'd been living two completely separate lives. In one life, I was the family disappointment, the daughter who wasted her economics degree on some vague government job nobody understood. In the other life, I was a senior financial analyst for a federal oversight agency, making $145,000 a year and building an investment portfolio that would make most people's eyes water. The gap between these two realities? That was entirely my parents' creation. I grew up in a household where money was simultaneously everything and nothing. Everything because my parents never stopped talking about it. Who had it, who didn't, what it could buy, what it meant about your worth as a person. Nothing because despite Dad's management position at a manufacturing company and Mom's boutique clothing store, we somehow always seemed one crisis away from disaster. Appearances matter, Rachel, Mom would say, adjusting another piece of expensive jewelry she couldn't actually afford. People judge you by what they see. What they saw was a family that drove nice cars, lived in a pristine 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs, and took vacations to places that sounded impressive at cocktail parties. What they didn't see was the credit card debt, the underwater mortgage, the delicate house of cards that required constant juggling to keep standing. My older brother Marcus was the golden child. The one who went into pharmaceutical sales, made good money, married the right kind of woman and gave my parents the grandchildren they wanted. He played the game perfectly, showing up to family events in designer suits and talking about his latest commission checks. I was different. I'd always been good with numbers, the kind of kid who did complex math problems for fun and understood compound interest before I understood algebra. I went to state school on a full academic scholarship, which my parents somehow managed to be embarrassed about, like getting free education was less impressive than paying for an expensive one. It's not Harvard, Mom would say with a tight smile when people asked where I was going to college. I majored in economics and graduated summa cum laude. Got recruited straight out of school by a federal financial oversight agency that most people have never heard of but that has significant power in the banking sector. The starting salary was $68,000 with clear advancement paths and excellent benefits. My parents' reaction when I told them? Disappointment. Government work? Dad had said, his nose wrinkling like I'd announced I was becoming a trash collector. Rachel, you could be making real money in private sector. Banking, investment firms, consulting. It's a good job, Dad. Stable. Important work. It's a dead end, Mom cut in. You're going to be stuck at some desk making poverty wages while your friends get rich. That was 8 years ago. In those 8 years I'd been promoted 3 times. I now led a team that analyzed financial institutions for regulatory compliance, investigated fraud cases, and prepared reports that influenced federal policy. I'd also started investing aggressively, real estate crowdfunding, index funds, a few carefully chosen individual stocks in sectors I understood through my work. By age 30, my net worth was $487,000. I owned a modest condo in the city, drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, and lived well below my means while my investment accounts grew steadily. My parents knew none of this. What they knew was that I worked some government job, lived in some apartment, and didn't display obvious signs of wealth. To them this meant I was failing. Still driving that old car? Dad would ask at family gatherings, shaking his head. When are you going to buy a real house? Mom would add. Marcus and Jennifer just upgraded to a 5-bedroom. I'd learned to smile and change the subject. But about 6 years ago something shifted. I started noticing things were getting worse for my parents. Dad mentioned restructuring at his company. Mom's boutique, which had never been particularly profitable, started having more slow months. The expensive vacations stopped. The new car purchases stopped. Then one night Mom called me crying. Rachel, I don't know what to do. The mortgage payment didn't go through. The bank is threatening. We might lose the house. What happened to the payment? We had some unexpected expenses. Your father's company delayed bonuses. The boutique had a terrible quarter. We just need a little help to get through this month. Something in my chest tightened. These were my parents. They'd raised me, fed me, put a roof over my head for 18 years. Whatever our differences, whatever the judgment and criticism, they were family. How much do you need? Just $2,800 for this month's mortgage. We'll pay you back next month, I promise. I sent the money that night. Next month came. No payback. Instead, another call. Rachel, I'm so sorry, but things are still tight. Could you possibly cover just one more month? We're waiting on a big boutique order to come through. I covered it. And the month after that. And the month after that. Somewhere around month 4, I stopped expecting to be paid back. Somewhere around month 8, Mom stopped promising to pay me back. By the end of year 1, it had become simply understood. I paid their mortgage. They never mentioned it. I never brought it up. At family gatherings, the criticism continued. You really need to think about your financial future. Dad would lecture me over Thanksgiving turkey while I'd paid his mortgage for 14 consecutive months. Maybe if you'd gone into private sector like we suggested, Mom would add, while I'd transferred another $2,800 that very morning. I'd set up an automatic transfer. Every month, $2,800 moved from my checking account to theirs. I tracked every payment in a spreadsheet. I told myself I was helping. I told myself this was temporary. I told myself a lot of things. But I wasn't just paying their mortgage. My career had taken off in ways I hadn't fully advertised to anyone outside my professional circle. The financial oversight work I did caught the attention of senior agency officials. I was asked to consult on increasingly high-profile cases. I testified before Congress twice on banking regulation matters. I was published in the Federal Reserve's Economic Journal. At 32, I was promoted to senior financial analyst with a specialty in fraud detection. My salary jumped to $145,000. My boss, Director Patricia Chen, became something of a mentor. You have a gift for seeing patterns others miss, she told me during my performance review. Have you ever considered private sector forensic accounting? You could make 3 times what we pay you. I like the work we do here, I said honestly. It matters. It does. And I'm glad you're here. But Rachel, take care of yourself too. I've seen too many dedicated public servants give everything to the job and forget they have their own lives to build. Her words stuck with me. I was giving plenty to the job. But I was also giving $2,800 every single month to parents who thought I was a failure. In 3 years, I'd transferred $100,800 to them. In another 3 years, it would be over $200,000. And they still treated me like the disappointing child who'd made poor life choices. Marcus knew nothing about the money I was sending. Neither did his wife Jennifer. At family gatherings, they'd talk about their expenses, the new pool they were installing, the private school tuition for their kids, the European vacation they were planning. Must be nice, Mom would say, beaming at them. Then she'd turn to me. Rachel, are you still in that same apartment? Same condo, yes. You really should think about building equity. Marcus and Jennifer are on their 3rd house already. I'd transferred $2,800 to her account 4 days earlier. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. But I'd made a decision early on. I wouldn't tell them about the money I was sending. If I did, it would become expected rather than appreciated. It would become leverage. And worse, it would be something they could hold over me while still finding ways to make it seem insufficient. Oh, just the mortgage? Well, Marcus helps with so much more. Well, better to keep it invisible. Better to let them think I was the disappointment while I quietly kept their house from foreclosure. But the resentment was building. Especially when Mom's boutique began doing better. I'd see her Facebook posts. New inventory, successful trunk shows, best quarter yet. And still, every month $2,800 left my account. I started keeping more detailed records. Not just the mortgage payments but dates, communications, everything. I told myself it was just good financial practice. I didn't let myself think about why I might need such documentation. Then, about 8 months ago, something happened that changed everything. I was reviewing my credit report, something I did quarterly as part of my own financial hygiene, when I noticed something wrong. A credit card I didn't recognize. Capital One. Balance, $23,000. Opened 14 months ago. My stomach dropped. I called the fraud department immediately. As they investigated, more appeared. A Discover card. $18,000. Case card. $31,000. A personal loan from an online lender. $47,000. Total fraudulent debt in my name. $119,000. Do you have any family members who might have access to your personal information? The fraud investigator asked. My parents had my social security number. My birth certificate. They'd helped me fill out my first credit card application when I was in college. They had everything they'd need. I felt sick. I need to make some calls, I told the investigator. I didn't call my parents. Not yet. Instead, I called Patricia, my boss. Explained the situation. She listened quietly. Rachel, you need to file a police report. This is identity theft. It's my parents. That doesn't change what it is legally. And given your position here, given the security clearances you hold and the sensitive financial information you work with, you need to handle this by the book. He was right. My job required financial integrity. Having unexplained debt in my name, even fraudulent debt, could jeopardize my clearance. I'm going to recommend someone to you, Patricia continued. A forensic accountant I've worked with before. Former FBI. He specializes in family financial fraud cases. Let him investigate fully before you confront anyone. His name was Robert Hayes. Retired FBI white-collar crime division, now running his own forensic accounting firm. I met him in his downtown office 3 days later. Tell me everything, he said. I did. The mortgage payments. The credit cards I discovered. The whole history. He took notes without judgment. When I finished, he looked at me steadily. How much documentation do you have of the mortgage payments? Every single one. Bank transfer records going back 72 months. Good. I'm going to need access to those. And I'll need you to sign some authorizations so I can pull the full credit history, investigate the fraudulent accounts, and trace where that money went. How long will this take? Thoroughly? 4 to 6 weeks. But Rachel, you should prepare yourself. In cases like this, we usually find more than the client initially discovered. Are you ready for that? I wasn't sure I was ready for any of this. But I nodded anyway. Robert's investigation took exactly 5 weeks. When he called me to come in for the findings, his voice was grim. It's worse than the credit cards, he said. Robert's office conference room had a large whiteboard covered in notes and figures. He'd prepared a full presentation. Let's start with what you knew about, he began. The mortgage payments. I verified all 72 transfers totaling $201,600. Your parents never made a single payment to you in return, despite multiple early promises documented in your text messages to do so. He clicked to the next slide. The credit cards you discovered. I've now identified 7 total cards fraudulently opened in your name over a 20-month period. Total current balance, $142,000. My hands went cold. Where did the money go? That's where it gets interesting. I was able to trace most of it. Home improvements to their property, $47,000. This includes a renovated kitchen, new landscaping, and a backyard patio installation. Inventory purchases for your mother's boutique, $38,000. A lease buyout and down payment on your father's new truck, $22,000. Vacation expenses, $19,000. I found charges from a cruise and 2 trips to Florida. The remaining $16,000 went to regular living expenses, credit card payments on their legitimate cards, and cash advances. He paused. Rachel, they were using fraudulently obtained money in your name to maintain a lifestyle they couldn't afford while you were also paying their mortgage. I couldn't speak. There's more. I found 2 personal loans, also opened fraudulently in your name from online lenders. These are particularly predatory, high interest rates, aggressive collection practices. Total current balance, $67,000. That brings the total fraudulent debt to $209,000. $209,000. Plus the $201,600 I'd knowingly given them. My parents had extracted or stolen over $410,000 from me in 6 years. This is a federal crime, Robert continued. Identity theft, wire fraud potentially, given the electronic nature of the credit applications. You have multiple options here, but given your position in federal financial oversight, I strongly recommend you involve law enforcement. What happens if I do that? They'll likely face federal charges. Given the amount and duration, we're talking potential prison time. But Rachel, his voice softened slightly, you also need to think about your own career and financial security. This amount of fraud in your name is a serious problem for someone in your position. You need to clear this completely and definitively. I sat in that conference room for 2 hours as Robert walked me through every piece of evidence. Bank statements. Credit applications with forged signatures. IP address logs showing applications coming from my parents' home. Security camera footage from a bank where someone matching my mother's description had deposited a cash advance from one of the fraudulent cards. The evidence was overwhelming. What do I do? Finally asked. That's your decision. But I'd recommend confronting them with evidence present, in a controlled setting, and with clear consequences outlined. This has been going on for 6 years because there have been no consequences. That needs to change. I thought about Easter coming up in 2 weeks. The whole family would be there. Marcus and Jennifer, my aunt and uncle, my cousins. My parents loved Easter. Big meal, everyone dressed up, the perfect picture of family success. Can you come to Easter dinner? I asked Robert. He raised an eyebrow. As your forensic accountant? As my documentation. A small smile crossed his face. I've never been invited to serve papers over ham before. But yes, Rachel. I can do that. Easter Sunday arrived with perfect spring weather. Mom had insisted on hosting at their house, the house I'd been paying for. I'd helped her pick out the furniture in the living room with money from my first promotion. The kitchen where she'd be cooking had been renovated with money stolen in my name. I arrived early as requested. Mom was in full hostess mode, wearing a new dress I suspected I'd unknowingly purchased via fraudulent credit card. Rachel, finally here. Can you help me set the table? Actually, Mom, I need to talk to you and Dad before everyone arrives. Now. Honey, I have so much to do. Now. Something in my tone made her stop. She called for Dad, who came in from the garage. What's this about? He asked, checking his watch. Guests arrive in 40 minutes. Then we should start. I pulled out my laptop and set it on their dining room table. The same table where we'd had countless family meals. The same table where they'd criticized my life choices while I paid their bills. For 6 years, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. You've told me I'm not contributing to this family. That I'm selfish. That I've wasted my potential. Rachel, we don't need to do this right now, Mom started. Yes, we do. Because here's what you don't know. I opened the first spreadsheet. This is a record of every mortgage payment I've made for you. 72 months. $2,800 per month. Total, $201,600. Dad's face went pale. Mom's mouth opened. You asked for help 6 years ago. You said it would be 1 month. It became 72 months. Not once, not one single time, did you acknowledge this at family gatherings. Not once did you stop criticizing how I spent my money, my career choices, my lifestyle. You took $201,600 from me and told me I never contributed. We were going to pay you back, Mom whispered. When? Show me one payment you made to me. One acknowledgement that you owed me anything. Silence. But that's not all. I clicked to the next file. This is a credit report. My credit report. Notice anything interesting? I watched them scan it. Watched the moment they saw the credit cards. 7 credit cards opened fraudulently in my name. Total balance, $142,000. All opened using my personal information. Information you had access to. Applications submitted from your IP address. Charges for home improvements to this house. Inventory for Mom's boutique. Dad's truck. Your cruise. Rachel, we can explain, Dad started. Can you explain the 2 personal loans? Another $67,000? Can you explain forging my signature? Mom started crying. But they were performative tears, the kind she used when she wanted sympathy. We were desperate, she said. The business was failing. Your father's job was unstable. We didn't know what else to do. You could have asked me. You could have told me the truth. Instead, you committed federal crimes and destroyed my credit while continuing to take my money and criticize me every month. The doorbell rang. That's not a guest, I said. That's Robert Hayes. He's a forensic accountant. Former FBI. He's been investigating your fraud for the past 5 weeks. I opened the door. Robert came in with his briefcase, professional and calm. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, he said, nodding to my parents. I'm Robert Hayes. I've been retained by your daughter to investigate financial irregularities involving her identity and credit. He set his briefcase on the table and pulled out a thick folder. Let me walk you through what I found. For the next 20 minutes, Robert methodically presented every piece of evidence. Every fraudulent card. Every forged signature. Every trace dollar. He showed them the security footage. The IP logs. The payment histories. My parents sat frozen. The total amount fraudulently obtained in your daughter's name is $209,000, Robert concluded. Combined with the $201,600 she willingly gave you, you have extracted $410,600 from her over 6 years while simultaneously maintaining to family and friends that she was the family member who contributed nothing. The doorbell rang again. Marcus let himself in with Jennifer and the kids. "Happy Easter," he called out. He stopped when he saw the scene in the dining room. Mom crying. Dad pale. Me standing with a laptop and a stranger in a suit with papers spread across the table. "What's going on?" "Marcus," I said quietly. "Come sit down. You should hear this too." He came in slowly, Jennifer following. The kids ran off to play. "What is this?" Marcus asked. "This is me explaining that for 6 years I've been paying Mom and Dad's mortgage. $2,800 a month. While they criticized me for not contributing to the family." Marcus's eyes went wide. He looked at our parents. "Is this true?" Dad couldn't meet his eyes. "And this," I continued, "is forensic evidence that they also opened $209,000 in fraudulent credit cards and loans in my name to pay for home improvements, boutique inventory, vacations and Dad's truck. All while telling me I was a financial failure." Marcus stood up. "Mom, Dad, tell me this isn't true." Mom was fully sobbing now. "We were going to fix it. We were going to pay her back. We just needed time." 6 years. I said, my voice rising for the first time. "You had 6 years to tell me the truth. To stop taking. To acknowledge what I was doing. Instead, every holiday, every family gathering, you made me feel small. You criticized my choices while I kept your house from foreclosure and you stole my identity." Jennifer had gone pale. "This is fraud. You could go to prison for this." Robert nodded. "Yes. These are federal crimes. Given the amount and duration, we're looking at significant potential penalties." The doorbell kept ringing. Aunt Sarah and Uncle Tom arrived. Then cousins. The house filled with family, all confused about why Easter dinner was happening in a tension-filled dining room with a forensic accountant present. My mother kept trying to explain. "We were desperate. Rachel was doing well, we thought." "You thought wrong," I cut her off. "You saw what you wanted to see. I drove an old car, so I must be broke. I lived in a modest condo, so I must be struggling. You never asked about my actual career, my actual finances, my actual life. You decided I was a failure and treated me accordingly while taking everything I gave you." Marcus was reading through some of Robert's documentation. "Jesus Christ. You renovated the kitchen with her stolen money while she was eating ramen in her apartment." "I wasn't eating ramen," I said. "I have a net worth of $487,000. I could have afforded to help you properly if you'd been honest. Instead, you took and lied." The number hit the room like a bomb. 400. Dad started. $487,000. I'm a senior financial analyst for a federal oversight agency. I make $145,000 a year. I've testified before Congress. I've been published in federal economic journals. I've been building wealth steadily since graduation while living below my means and investing intelligently. The exact skills you mocked me for, the economics degree from state school, the boring government job, the old car and modest lifestyle, those were the skills that built my success." I looked around the room at my extended family, all watching in shock. "And every month while I built that success, I sent $2,800 to keep their house. While they told you all that I never helped, that I was selfish, that I was the disappointing child." Aunt Sarah looked at my mother with something like horror. "You told us she wouldn't help with your mortgage," she said slowly. "You said she refused when you asked." We. Mom couldn't finish. "I have 72 documented transfers," I said. "The truth is there in black and white." Robert cleared his throat. "Ms. Martinez, should I present the final documents?" I nodded. He pulled out 3 formal letters. "This first letter is to your parents' bank, documenting the fraud and requiring they close all accounts where fraudulent funds were deposited. This second letter is to the 3 credit bureaus, disputing all fraudulent accounts and requiring their removal from Ms. Martinez's credit report. This third letter is notice to your parents that all automatic transfers from Ms. Martinez's accounts are now cancelled, effective immediately. He set them on the table. Additionally, Ms. Martinez has the option to file criminal charges for identity theft, wire fraud and forgery. Given her position in federal financial oversight, she may be required to do so to maintain her security clearances. Rachel, please, Mom begged. We're your parents. We made mistakes, but we're family. Family doesn't steal from each other, I said flatly. Family doesn't take $410,000 and then criticize you for being selfish. Family doesn't commit federal crimes and expect forgiveness because you share DNA. Marcus was staring at our parents like he'd never seen them before. How could you do this? We needed help, Dad started. So did I shouted, finally losing my composure. I needed parents who supported me, who believed in me, who saw my success instead of inventing my failure. I needed you to be honest instead of stealing from me while criticizing me to my face. The room went silent. I took a breath, steadied myself. Here's what's going to happen. Robert has already filed the disputes with the credit bureaus. All fraudulent accounts will be removed from my name. You will be responsible for those debts. All $209,000. The automatic mortgage transfers stop today. Whether you keep this house is now entirely your problem. Rachel, we can't afford, Mom started. You could 6 years ago when you asked for 1 month of help. You should have been honest then. You should have downsized, sold the house, made real changes. Instead you stole and lied. These are the consequences. I looked at Robert. File the police report. All of it. Rachel, no. Dad stood up. Please, we'll go to prison. You committed crimes. Serious crimes. Against your own daughter. While taking her money. While publicly shaming her. Yes, there should be consequences. Marcus put his head in his hands. Jennifer was crying quietly. I gathered my laptop and stood up. I came here thinking maybe we could resolve this as a family. That maybe you'd apologize, acknowledge what you'd done, commit to making it right. But even now, caught with overwhelming evidence, you're still making excuses. Still trying to be victims. That tells me everything I need to know. I walked toward the door. Robert followed with his briefcase. Where are you going? Aunt Sarah asked quietly. Away from people who see me as a resource to exploit rather than a daughter to love. But it's Easter, Mom said weakly. Then maybe you should have thought about that before committing $209,000 worth of fraud against me. I walked out to my old Honda Civic, the car they'd mocked for years, and sat in the driver's seat for a long moment. My phone started ringing immediately. Marcus. I answered. Rachel, I had no idea. I know. They told us. They made it sound like you were selfish. Like you refused to help them. I had no idea you were paying their mortgage. I definitely didn't know about the fraud. It's not your fault, Marcus. Are you really going to press charges? I have to. For my clearances for my career. But honestly, even if I didn't have to, I think I would. They need to face real consequences or they'll never change. He was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. For how we treated you. For believing their version without asking yours. Thank you. Jennifer and I are leaving. We're not staying for Easter dinner. Not after this. After Marcus, the calls kept coming. Aunt Sarah, I'm horrified. I had no idea. Your mother told such a different story. Cousin Michelle, are you okay? Do you need anything? Even Uncle Tom, I always knew something was off with their finances. I let most of them go to voicemail. Robert called from his car. I'm filing the initial police report this afternoon. Federal agents will likely contact you within 48 hours. Are you prepared for that? Yes. Good. Rachel, you did the right thing. I know it doesn't feel good, but you did the right thing. That night, alone in my condo, I looked at my bank account. For the first time in 72 months, there was no pending $2,800 transfer. Next month, I'd have an extra $2,800. And the month after that. And the month after that. The money was never the point. But it was a symbol of everything else. The disrespect, the exploitation, the fundamental inability to see me as anything other than what they'd decided I was. My phone rang again. I answered. Rachel, please. The police are here. They're saying federal charges. Please, you can stop this. No, Mom. I can't. And I won't. We're your parents. Then you should have acted like it. I hung up. The federal investigation moved quickly. Within 3 weeks, my parents were formally charged with identity theft, wire fraud, and forgery. The evidence Robert had compiled made prosecution straightforward. Marcus called me regularly with updates. They're trying to get a plea deal. Their lawyer says they'll likely face prison time even with a plea. How are they holding up? Honestly, they're still acting like victims. Still making excuses. Dad told me yesterday they were trying to protect the family legacy. I told him they'd destroyed it instead. How are you handling all this? Jennifer and I have been going to therapy. Processing. He's pregnant, actually, we found out a week ago. We decided we needed to figure out what kind of grandparents we want our kids to have, if any. Right now the answer is none. Congratulations on the baby. Thanks. Rachel, I know this is the right thing what you're doing. But I'm sorry it had to happen. Me too. The fraudulent accounts were removed from my credit report within 60 days. My score jumped 140 points. The psychological relief was immense. Patricia, my boss, called me into her office. I've been briefed on your situation. Your clearances are secure. You handled everything properly. But Rachel, how are you? I'm processing. Take some time off. You've been carrying this weight for years. Take a real vacation. Go somewhere. Decompress. I took her advice. 2 weeks in Portugal alone, hiking and thinking and slowly letting go of the anger. When I got back, there was a letter from my parents' attorney. Plea deal accepted. Mom, 18 months in federal prison. Dad, 24 months. Both would be required to pay restitution of $209,000 plus penalties, though their bankruptcy filing meant I'd likely never see a cent of it. I didn't need the money. I'd never needed the money. What I'd needed was for them to see me, to value me, to tell me the truth. The house went into foreclosure 6 months after I stopped payments. They'd held on as long as they could, but without my $2,800 monthly, the math didn't work. Marcus told me they'd moved into a small rental apartment, selling most of their furniture. Mom keeps asking if you'll talk to her, he said during one of our monthly dinners. She's written you letters. I know. I get them. Do you read them? The first few. After that, they were all the same. Excuses. Justifications. Requests for forgiveness without any real understanding of what they did wrong. Do you think you'll ever forgive them? I thought about it. Maybe someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. They proved who they are when given the choice. I'm choosing to believe them. My net worth crossed $500,000 3 months after Easter. Without the mortgage payments, my savings rate accelerated. I maxed out my 401k, my IRA, and still had money left over to invest. Marcus and Jennifer had a beautiful baby girl. They asked me to be godmother. At the hospital, holding my niece, Marcus said something I'll never forget. I'm going to make sure she knows you. The real you. Not the version Mom and Dad created. I'd like that. A year after Easter, I was promoted again. Director of Fraud Analysis. $180,000 salary. A team of 12 analysts. An office with a window. Patricia retired and recommended me as her replacement. I didn't get it, I was too young, they said, but the fact that she'd thought I was ready meant everything. I started dating someone. Another federal analyst, different agency. On our 3rd date, he asked about my family. It's complicated, I said. Most families are. Mine committed $209,000 worth of fraud against me while I paid their mortgage for 6 years. He blinked. Hey, that's more complicated than most. But he didn't run. We're still together. I bought a new car. Not flashy, a 3-year-old Toyota Camry, reliable and efficient. But new to me. And paid for in cash. Marcus sent me a photo of it with a text. Mom saw this on Facebook. She says it's practical. I think that was supposed to be an insult, but we both know better now. I smiled. Practical had built me $500,000 in net worth by age 33. Practical had kept me employed, secure, and stable while their flashy lifestyle collapsed. Practical won. 2 years after Easter, my parents were released from federal prison. They moved to a different state trying to rebuild. Mom sent me an email, the first communication I'd accepted in years. Rachel, I understand if you never want to speak to us again. I understand we destroyed your trust. I just want you to know, I finally understand what we did. Not just the fraud but the dismissal. The criticism. The refusal to see who you really were. I spent 2 years in prison with a lot of time to think. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I'm sorry. I read it 3 times. I didn't respond immediately. Let it sit for a week. Talked to my therapist. Talked to Marcus. Talked to my boyfriend. Finally, I wrote back, "Thank you for the apology. I'm not ready for more than this. Maybe someday. But not now." It was honest. It was enough. I'm 34 now. Net worth, $625,000. Career, director track at a federal agency doing work that matters. Family, complicated but healing in the ways it can. Chosen family, strong, supportive, real. Every month I still see that $2,800 in my account. The money I used to send to parents who couldn't see my worth. Now it goes to my future. To the life I'm building. To the family I might have someday. A family I'll teach to value honesty over appearances, substance over flash, and love that doesn't come with conditions or theft. The money was never the point. But getting it back. That was everything. Sometimes I drive past their old house. The new owners renovated, painted it a different color. It's just a house now. Not a symbol. Not a weight. Just a place where I learned that family is supposed to build you up, not tear you down. And that sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to see you clearly, even if they're your parents. Especially if they're your parents. I drive my practical Toyota Camry to my important government job, manage my growing investment portfolio, and live my successful, stable, intentional life. And I never ever doubt my worth again.